Have you ever made a decision in the split second that changed everything? Not a big decision like buying a house or quitting a job. I mean a small choice. A choice made in the rain, in the dark, when no one was watching. We like to think we know who we are. We tell ourselves we are good people. We tell ourselves we would help a stranger. But when the world is cold, when your own life is falling apart, and when helping someone else costs you something you can't afford to lose, do you still stop? This is the story of Mark, a man who was broken, bankrupt, and on the edge of giving up, and the stranger he pulled from the gutter. What happened next wasn't just luck. It wasn't just fate. It was a truth so heavy it nearly crushed him. But in the end, it saved him. If you believe that kindness still exists in this world, even when things look dark, I want you to do something for me right now. Please hit that like button. It helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. We tell stories about life, truth, and the human heart every single week. So, take a deep breath. Turn up the volume. And let's go back to that rainy night in Ohio, where everything began. Mark was 45 years old. An age where you're supposed to have it all figured out. A mortgage. A retirement plan. Stability. But Mark had none of that. 6 months prior, the manufacturing plant outside of Cleveland had shut down. 300 jobs vanished overnight. Mark's was one of them. The savings were gone. The credit cards were maxed out. His wife, Sarah, was doing her best, working double shifts at a diner, but the tension in their house was thick enough to choke on. That night, Mark was driving home from a job interview that hadn't gone well. The rejection was polite but firm. They were looking for someone with more recent experience. He was thinking about turning the car around, thinking about driving until the gas ran out. That's how low he was. And then he saw it. At first, he thought it was a trash bag caught in the wind. But then, a movement. A hand. Mark slammed on the brakes. His heart hammered against his ribs. In this part of town, stopping for a stranger wasn't just risky, it was dangerous. The news was full of stories about scams, about people luring drivers off the road. Mark's first instinct was to keep driving. Let someone else handle it, he thought. You can't afford a lawsuit. You can't afford trouble. He put the car in drive. He moved forward 10 feet. And then he remembered his father. His father, who died with nothing in his pocket but a heart full of regret for the things he didn't do. Mark cursed under his breath, shifted into reverse, and pulled over. The man was older, maybe 70. His clothes were soaked, thin rags that offered no protection against the Ohio cold. He was conscious, but barely. Mark didn't ask questions. He didn't ask for ID. He just opened the passenger door and helped the man in. The stranger spoke weakly. He said, "You shouldn't have stopped." Mark told him not to talk, just to warm up. He said he was taking him to the hospital. The stranger pleaded, "No hospitals. Please." Mark hesitated again. No hospitals. That was a red flag. But the man was shivering so violently his teeth were chattering. Mark made a call. He wasn't taking him to the ER. He was taking him home. It was only 10 minutes away. It was the stupidest thing Mark had ever done. And the bravest. His wife, Sarah, didn't yell. She didn't ask why he brought a bleeding stranger into their already stressed home. She just saw a human being in pain. They cleaned the cut. It wasn't deep. Just a gash from a fall. They gave him dry clothes. A hot meal. The man's name was Elias. He didn't offer a last name. He didn't offer a story. He just ate. And he watched them. He watched the way Mark rubbed his temples when he thought no one was looking. He watched the way Sarah counted the coins in the jar before putting them back. Elias saw everything. That night, Mark sat on the couch. Elias came out of the guest room and said, "You are in trouble, Mark." Mark replied, "We're all in trouble, Elias. Just get some rest." Elias insisted, "Not money trouble. Soul trouble. You're tired." Mark looked away, unable to answer. Mark fell asleep on the couch that night. He didn't know it then, but Elias didn't sleep at all. He sat by the window, watching the rain stop, watching the sun rise, watching a life that was about to change. When Mark woke up, Elias was gone. There was no note. No thank you. Just the dry clothes folded neatly on the bed. Mark felt a sting of disappointment. Had he been robbed? He checked the drawers. Nothing was taken. In fact, the house felt cleaner. Organized. The day proceeded normally. Or so it seemed. Mark went to a job fair. He handed out his resume. Usually, he'd get a polite nod. Today, a manager stopped him. Looked at his resume. Looked at him. The manager said, "We don't have an opening. But I have a friend who does. Come see me tomorrow." Mark didn't think much of it. Luck happens. But then, the phone calls started. A creditor called. They said there was an error in his account. A payment had been made anonymously, $500. Then another call. The electric bill. Paid in full. Sarah was crying. Not from sadness, but from relief. The weight on their shoulders was lifting brick by brick. But Mark felt a knot in his stomach. This wasn't luck. This was too specific. Over the next 3 weeks, Mark's life transformed. He got a contract job that turned into a permanent position. His credit score jumped. It was like the universe was rewriting his history. But every night, Mark looked at the empty guest room. He was waiting for Elias to come back. He needed to say thank you. He needed to know why. One evening, Mark found an envelope tucked under his windshield wiper. No stamp. No address. Just his name. Inside was a key. A key to a safety deposit box at a bank downtown. And a note. It read, "The truth is in the box. Come alone." Mark's hands shook. He told Sarah he was going to the store. He didn't go to the store. He drove to the bank. He felt like he was in a movie or a dream. He walked into the manager's office. He presented the key. The bank manager opened the box. He handed Mark a thick file folder and a small wooden journal. Inside the box, there was no money. No gold. Just a file folder and a leather-bound journal. Mark opened the folder. His breath caught in his throat. It was financial documents. Stock transfers. Property deeds. All made out to him. This was millions of dollars. Enough to pay off the house. Enough to retire. Enough to never worry again. But why? He opened the journal. The first page had a date from 30 years ago. And a name. Before we reveal what Mark found in that journal, I need to ask you a favor. Stories like this remind us that our actions echo longer than we realize. If you're enjoying this journey, please click the subscribe button and turn on notifications. It takes 2 seconds, but it supports this channel immensely. Now let's find out the truth. Mark began to read. And as he read, the color drained from his face. The truth wasn't about charity. It was about justice. The journal belonged to Elias. But Elias wasn't his real name. The name in the book was Arthur Vance. Mark knew that name. Everyone in the construction industry knew that name. Arthur Vance was a developer who had gone bankrupt in a scandal 20 years ago and vanished. Mark turned the pages. Arthur wrote about his downfall. How he was betrayed by his partners. How he lost his company, his reputation, and his family. He wrote about hitting rock bottom. And then he wrote about a boy. 30 years ago, a young boy saw a homeless man shivering on a park bench. The boy didn't have much. He was saving for a bike. But he gave the man his entire savings. $20. He didn't ask for a name. He just said, "Get something warm." Mark remembered that day. He had forgotten it. It was just a small act. A moment of childhood innocence. He thought the man had bought food. But Arthur Vance wrote that he didn't buy food. He bought a bus ticket. He used that money to get to a city where he had one last contact. That contact helped him start over. Arthur rebuilt his empire. He became wealthy again. But he never forgot the boy. He spent years trying to find him. When he finally tracked Mark down, he saw the news reports. He saw the layoffs. He saw the struggle. Elias hadn't just helped Mark because he was kind. He helped him because Mark had saved him first. The money in the safety deposit box wasn't a gift. It was a repayment. A debt of honor, paid with interest. But there was one more page in the journal. The last entry. Dated the night Mark found him on the road. Mark read the final words aloud to himself in the quiet bank lobby. "Mark, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Not away. Gone. The illness I have is terminal. I didn't come to you for shelter. I came to see you one last time. I wanted to look into the eyes of the only person who ever gave to me when I had nothing. I wanted to make sure you were okay. The money is yours. But the real gift is not the cash. The real gift is the knowledge that kindness is a circle. It comes back." Mark stood on the sidewalk. He had millions of dollars. He had security. He had everything he thought he wanted. But he didn't feel rich. He felt heavy. Because he realized that Arthur had died alone. He had died knowing he was loved by a stranger. But he had no family to hold his hand. When Mark told Sarah the truth, she didn't cheer. She cried. They realized that their financial problems were solved, but they had lost a friend they never really got to know. Mark realized that for the last 3 weeks, he had been focused on his own salvation, not on the man who was dying in his guest room. Mark made a decision that day. He could have taken the money and lived in luxury. He could have retired. But he remembered Arthur's eyes. He remembered the loneliness. Mark and Sarah decided to use the money to start a foundation, not for themselves, for others. They named it the Vance Project. They dedicated it to helping the homeless find not just shelter, but connection. Mark went back to his job. He didn't quit. He realized that work gave him purpose. The money was a tool, not a goal. Every year on the anniversary of that rainy night, Mark visits Arthur's grave. He doesn't bring money. He doesn't a story. He tells Arthur about the people they helped that year. He tells him about the lives that were changed. Mark often says that the money didn't change his life. The truth changed his life. The truth that we are all connected. That the stranger on the side of the road might be the most important person you ever meet. That your smallest act of kindness might be someone's only hope. We live in a world that tells us to look out for number one, to protect our own, to keep our heads down. But stories like Mark's remind us that there is a different way. A harder way, maybe. But a better way. You might not have millions of dollars to give away. You might not be able to save a stranger's life in the dramatic way Mark did. But you have something. You have your attention. You have your empathy. You have the ability to stop. I want to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it in the comments below. When was the last time you helped a stranger? Or when was the last time a stranger helped you? Let's fill the comment section with stories of light. Let's remind each other that good people are still out there. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Send it to a friend who is having a hard week. Send it to a family member. You never know who needs to hear that their kindness matters. And of course, subscribe to the channel. We have so many more stories to tell, and I want you to be part of this community. Mark's life changed because he stopped. What will happen if you stop? What will happen if you look up? The truth is waiting for you. But you have to be brave enough to find it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember, be the reason someone believes in the goodness of people today. I'll see you in the next story.